Welcome to Mindful Mostly. I'm Andrea Collins, and I'm pretty into mindful living. I mean, mostly. I strive to live my healthiest, most mindfully motivated life, but I am not perfect at it. For instance, Friday night, I ate 2 brownies, pizza, cheese, 2 martinis, and watched Reality Bites in my yoga pants. It's my Friday night. You know, when I was watching Reality Bites, Janine Garofalo works at The Gap, and it reminded me of how badly I wanted to work at The Gap back in the day. Are you with me on that? I remember going in with my resume and applying and thinking, oh, these people are so cool. Oh my God, look at her in her cool Gap jeans and her cool striped Gap top. I'm never gonna get a job here. And you know what? I never did. I just wasn't cool enough, it's true. I got a job instead at Roots, which was Roots before it was cool again. So it was like working at Northern Reflections. But man, can I fold a sweatshirt? That is what dreams are made of. So pizza, Reality Bites on Friday, but I balanced it out by going for a super long run on Sunday and eating some kale salad, even though after I added like cheese and a little bit of rice to it and like a bunch of nuts, it probably wasn't that healthy, but whatever, balance, you know? If you are digging this show, subscribe to the podcast. Let me know what you think by leaving a review on iTunes. That is where it's at. So once you subscribe, you just scroll down a bit and you can leave a review. Also, a shout out on Instagram. The address is @mindfulmostly. And I want to see who's listening, what you're doing when you're listening, or what makes you mindful most of the time. You can also DM me with show ideas or feedback, whatevs. Just hit me up. On today's show, I gotta say, pretty stoked. This is a biggie. Mastin Kipp is on. Now, he is an author, an entrepreneur, an inspirational speaker, and founder of thedailylove.com, which is huge. Also, Oprah recognized him as an up-and-coming thought leader of the next generation of spiritual thinkers. Are you kidding me? How major is that? His latest book, Claim Your Power, a 40-day journey to dissolve the hidden blocks that keep you stuck and finally thrive in your life's unique purpose, has just been released. It's a step-by-step guide to identifying and dissolving what's holding you back. It's going to help you transform your life as well. And so that is what we're going to talk about with Mastin today. He is going to tell you how to identify what is blocking you from success, what most commonly holds us ladies back from what he has seen, how to get unstuck, and how we should look at our goals. Sounds good, right? First, though, it's the Soul Nugget shout out, and this one comes from Brittany Michaud. It says, "Your intuition knows her shit." Damn right, Brittany. And lastly, this one, love it. He asked, "What's your favorite position?" I said, CEO. Damn! Yes! Loving this on the show. It is the one and only Mastin Kipp. What's up?
Howdy, Andrea. Happy to be here today. Thank you so much for having me.
Now, you're kind of a big deal. I love your story. Mastin, if you don't know, he's the creator of Functional Life Coaching, best-selling author, and an up-and-coming thought leader of the next generation of spiritual thinkers, according to Oprah. Damn, right?
A lot to live up to. I'll do my best.
Yeah, that must give you You must be shocked every time you hear that. Because I know your story. You were a regular cool guy living in California. And then next thing you know, boom. Oprah calls you one of the spiritual thinkers of this generation. What does that feel like when you hear that?
To me, it's surreal. And I used to be in the music business as a manager. And so I do my best to sort of separate who I am from the billboard. I never believed the billboard.
Right.
But I do my best. And the only time I really utilize that is like if I'm meeting with my team and they're very clearly right and I'm wrong, but I don't want to admit it yet. And I say, well, you don't understand. I'm the awakened one, according to Oprah. And I joke, and they all kind of go, oh my God, whatever, and they move right beyond it. But other than that, I don't really think about it too much. It's a total honor. But I just do my best every day to kind of show up and serve. And, the billboard and the person, try my best to match it, but, I can never live up to that stuff.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Well, I like your humble way about it. Now, can you tell us a little bit about your story from where I know you talk a lot about hitting rock bottom and then getting to where you are now. Can you tell us a bit of that story?
Sure. And also just for context, especially adult learners, they want to know, why am I listening to this person, especially if they've ever heard, they don't know who I am. So just for context, what I help people really do is figure out what's blocking them. And usually it's a hidden thing that you don't really know that you have. It's a blind spot. And how to really discover and heal what's called like a root cause emotional trauma and find meaning in whatever pain you've had in the past. And when you do that, you tend to kind of line up with what your purpose is, what your passion is. And the benefit of that is, finances come, romance tends to happen. You have great relationships. You tend to get a general sense of well-being, weight loss. There's a lot of studies around how purpose and, just general well-being, and it can extend your life, peer-reviewed research around that. So that's really what I'm about. And the reason why I'm about that is because I didn't have that. And I had the opposite of that for many years, especially when I was younger, 18, 19 years old. My definition of success was go to Hollywood, be rich, be famous, be powerful. And in the context of today's, sort of conversation around the Me Too movement and what's happening in Hollywood, I wanted to be in proximity to the power players, and I had no clue that, what was happening behind the scenes. I just wanted to be able to, be important and be significant. And after, getting my dream job at about 22, I was a senior vice president of A&R at Geffen Records, which was a major label position. I lost that job. And it was everything I was working towards since I was 12 or 13 years old. It's what I wanted to do with my life. So at that point, it was about 9 or 10 years of focus. It was gone. And I found myself asking questions like, what's my purpose? And feeling like my purpose was gone because I lost this job and I lost what I was supposed to do. That's when you start getting the kind of like suicidal, dark thoughts. And one morning, early morning, 2 or 3 a.m., I was kind of like thinking about kind of like binging on drugs and alcohol, and just had this really specific insight that, it's time for you to feel as good off the drugs as you did on the drugs. And then that brought me to sort of like learning into personal growth development and all the personal growth material. And thanks to all the recommendation engines on Amazon and iTunes, basically consumed all the books very quickly, like I did drugs essentially, and just thought to myself, where was this information when I was younger? And so I thought maybe I should just bring this information to the world. And talk about how old I am, like I shared my first inspirational quotes on MySpace.
Nice.
Right. And I was like the quote guy around Hollywood. And eventually it sort of just turned into sort of, this blog called The Daily Love that published mostly other people's stuff. And then finally I kind of fell in love with helping people in coaching and started my own coaching business and created a type of coaching called functional life coaching, which is about root cause trauma work, emotional trauma. And my mission today is to really help end emotional trauma in my lifetime and help people just make that a thing of the past. So it's been a very interesting journey, and anything that I share or ask my clients to do, or the instruction or the concepts or things that I've gone through my own experience. So I don't ever ask anyone to do stuff I haven't done myself. And for me, it's just like, let's just get through whatever's hurting you and learn the lesson through that so that we can help you move forward quickly. And not be victimized by anything. And so that's kind of what I'm about.
Sometimes it's hard to know your purpose, and I'm interested to know, like, did you know when you were doing the drugs and in the music industry, did you know that this now would be your purpose, and would you say it's your purpose?
Oh, hell no.
Yeah.
No way. Like, I got dragged kicking and screaming by my intuition, life, the divine, whatever you want to think of it as, like, something like was like, no, this is what you're going to be doing. I was like, no, I don't want to do that. That's cheesy and stupid and I don't want to be that guy. I want to be the cool guy in Hollywood. And that just never really worked out. And the more that I sort of just started to do this work, I mean, I was the reluctant coach. Like, there are people who start businesses today that want to be like celebrity coaches. I'm like, what? Like, I don't want to do that. I got dragged into this very reluctantly. But what kept me here was when I started working with people and seeing the transformation and seeing people reconciling with family members they haven't talked to in decades, people, healing stuff from childhood. I was like, this is awesome, and so I just really fell in love with the transformation. And then I started to see, I'm a 6'5" white guy from Kansas in the upper middle class. Like, I grew up with not that many problems. And so when I started to work with clients, mostly women, I started to hear, I've had a front row seat to sort of the Me Too movement for the last decade of hearing stories. And I was like, this is what? Like, what happened? Because I had no context of that in the body and the gender that I am. And so I thought, like, wow, I can actually really help here. And what's been ironic is over the last decade, our clients have primarily been female. 97% have been female. So I'm a guy who understands women fairly well, and works with primarily women to help them, find meaningful work or start a business and create great relationships. And purpose is a big deal because purpose typically is found through two things. One, looking back at some of the hurt and the pain and realizing that if you find a different meaning or context for what you've been through, you can actually turn it into something really beautiful and great. And then the other way that you tend to find your purpose is really looking at the problems that you want to solve and that you'd love to solve and that you're passionate about solving. And somewhere between what you went through and the problems that you want to solve in the world is going to be your purpose. And when you focus on that stuff and you serve folks, your survival tends to be effortless. Finances tend to come. And anyone who's really like loving life and anyone who's really engaged in life and living that knows what I'm talking about. And people who aren't, they think I'm crazy. Like, what are you talking about? But 100% this is true. And we've guided, thousands of people through the process of sort of healing their past and falling in love with the problems to solve. And that tends to be sort of the sweet spot.
So I guess, like you were saying, it's these blocks that hold us back. And in what you just mentioned, it's once you identify what they are and sort of rewrite how you're telling your story, you can move forward. But how do you truly figure out what your blocks are in the first place?
Well, so I'm different than a lot of my predecessors and what's sort of popular in personal development, because a lot of people will say you don't need to know what happened. You just need to tell a different story or something. And I think that's malarkey. You absolutely, what I've seen is categorically with client after client after client, when people understand what's stopping them and why, they can have compassion for themselves instead of like making themselves wrong for having a limiting belief or guilt or shame or doubt. They can say, oh, of course I have that based on what I went through. Anyone who went through that would have that exact same thing. It was a great coping mechanism and helped me survive. But you know what? Yesterday's medicine has become today's poison. So let's just be grateful for how far it got me and then say, you know what, I'm ready to move beyond this and realize that if I move beyond the fear of whatever I think is going to happen, I'm not going to die. This is not going to be some rehash of something from the past. I'm actually going to be provided for and I'm going to be okay. That is a beautiful journey. And so functional life coaching and the Claim Your Power process basically is a 40-day process. And the reason why I wrote the book is because I've been working with people in private practice, primarily in retreats like in Bali and Maui and high-end coaching groups. And for a decade gained these results. And I thought, this can't be reserved for people who can spend $10, $20, $30,000. This has to be for everybody. And so that's why I wrote the book as a framework to sort of take people through the process. And what's so cool is that it's very efficient. It's not something that you have to sort of do therapy for 10 years to figure it out. Like, people can do it in a couple of days. The first few days are just kind of boom, it takes you there. So if you're willing to sort of slow down for a second and look at, what's blocking you, you'll get the result. And one little sort of disclaimer is that the work is for people who are really ready to transform and change. If you're just looking for to upgrade your coping from drugs and alcohol to meditation and quinoa, but not really do the work and just kind of relieve the pressure, I'm not your guy. What I'm really good at is helping people who are ready to change, who have tried a bunch of other stuff, say, you know what, I just want to get the result. That's what this process is really all about. So there's also a level of a willingness on the behalf of the person who wants to go on the journey to actually go on the journey with us.
Yeah. Now, since you say 97% of your clients are female, what is something that you notice we all butcher ourselves about? What's a common theme?
I think the greatest impediment that I've seen, and this is just me experiencing and observing. This is not a declaration of
Sure.
a male point of view. It's just I'm reporting back the data, right?
Yeah.
I think that consistently women have this belief that they have to compete with men, when in fact they're in their true nature, they're way more powerful than men. And so I think that the biggest block is I have to compete or be like a man because it's a man's world, versus let's just create a different world with different rules. Because, you know, feminine intuition, feminine cooperation, feminine leadership, that is extremely powerful. And let's be real, like every man came from a woman. Okay.
Yeah.
So, you know, like no man can give birth to anything. You know, we're hanging out for a couple seconds and then we're not really needed after that. And in biology and in the world, a lot of different species, you know, the female eats the male after they procreate. So, you know, I think that the comparison to men and saying I have to be like that is probably the biggest thing that holds women back, because in their true nature, they're far more powerful.
Right. That's really interesting. When it comes to getting unstuck, okay, so you're in this place, you've had the victim mentality, you're not in the situation, whether it be career or love life, whatever it may be, financial, that you want. How do you get unstuck?
Yes, great question. So the first thing you have to understand is getting unstuck is sort of like losing weight, right? People have this idea that, like, if I go to a seminar or read a book or listen to an interview like this, that magically my aha moment will be enough to carry me for the rest of my life and I'll never have to do any work again, which is kind of like saying, well, I worked out once on Saturday, where's my six pack, right? So like getting unstuck is a process, and it's not something that just happens. An aha moment is not enough. A breakthrough is not enough. You have to really get to a point where you're ready to dedicate your life to a lifestyle of really shifting out of, you know, whatever it's been. So otherwise what's going to happen is you're going to start and stop and start and stop and start and stop. And at some point just get frustrated and then just stop. So if you have a lifestyle mindset and you're going to realize that this is going to take some time, and you view it as a training process, just like, you know, a weight loss experience or any type of, you know, marathon experience, you don't just run for half a mile and thinking about a marathon the rest of your life without ever training again. So there has to be sort of this lifestyle mindset. With that in mind, the first thing that you have to do is have compassion for yourself, to realize whatever's been keeping you stuck there's nothing wrong with you. The part of you that's keeping yourself stuck just wants you to survive and wants you to be okay. And that's how we're all wired. As soon as you admit that and accept that, there's usually a relief of like, yes, that's true. Then the next thing you have to look at is, well, how has that part of me shown up in all the different experiences and helped participate in keeping me stuck? And when you start to look at your part in things, that's when it's like, you know, kind of humble pie, right? Because what you start to realize is like, you know what? Yes, maybe this relationship was a toxic relationship, but I decided to stay because staying here and playing small served me in my survival. Or I decided to stay in a soul-sucking job and not leave because, you know what? I was too scared to face the uncertainty of having to start my own business. And when you start to like own how you're showing up in different areas of your life, then you can really start to take your power back and start to change, because you can make a different decision. If you're focused on blaming something or someone else or a circumstance or your finances or the government or a political party, you're never really going to be able to live the life that you want. You've got to start to look at how you're engaging and responding to the stimulus and the circumstances of your life. And then from there, what you got to do is you got to start to really make a daily effort to start to do contrary action. And typically that comes from having a mentor of some kind who knows the road ahead, having a soul tribe of people who believe in you, that are not your peer group of people that aren't asking you to stay stuck. And then, you know, listening to interviews and podcasts like this and filling your mind with, you know, higher level conversations and being in proximity of people who are having those higher level conversations. But then you have to actually put, you know, pen to paper or like foot to the pavement and actually do it consistently. And that's basically how you do it. And it's one step at a time. And one thing that I tell people, which they don't like at first, but I think it's important to lower your expectations in the short term and raise your expectations for the long term. Because what happens is we set these big goals. In the short term, we start taking this action that's way beyond what we can handle, and we get overwhelmed by it. And then that overwhelm, we stop, and then we beat ourselves up for stopping, and then we just stop. So if you can just actually lower your expectations of what you can accomplish in the next 30 days, you can increase your expectations of what you can do in the next year.
Right.
So those would be some very practical things I can share with you.
Yeah. So like small changes, just like the way you would start a new exercise routine or a diet. Like they always say, don't change everything at once because then you'll fail, like little bit by bit.
100%. 100%.
And I think that, like what you said about it's a process. You know, your book is Claim Your Power, a 40-day journey. So it takes time, and once you identify what it is that's holding you back is when things really get moving. I heard this quote that blew my damn mind, Mastin. It was,
yeah.
People live the lives they're willing to tolerate.
Yes.
And that just really resonated with me because it's like,
it's true.
You're your own boss. You're your own leader in this situation. So you got to turn it around and start saying no to things. No is a very powerful word, isn't it?
It is absolutely a powerful word, and the thing is that there's a fame. Everyone knows pretty much the fight or flight response whenever there's a stressor or a fear, but there's a less well known survival response called mend and attend. And the basic idea is if I can't run from it and I can't kill it, maybe if I take care of it, I'll live.
Yeah.
And so what happens is that when you start to say no to something or somebody else, if you've been in that caretaker role for a period of time, your entire nervous system is going to say, if you say no and you focus on yourself, you will die. And you've got to learn to basically call BS and say, no, I won't. We tend to overestimate threats because of, just sort of chronic stress that we're under. But essentially, you're not going to die if you start to choose yourself, but it's going to feel that way. And when people understand that, they go, oh, this is normal? Yeah, that's totally normal. You're not having a panic attack. Your nervous system is like, whoa, what are you doing? You're completely messing with my certainty. And so if you can understand that, it makes it easier to say no.
And then I guess that becomes becoming more comfortable with that feeling of uncertainty, that like anxious feeling in your gut of, oh my God, did I just ruin this for myself? You've got to get comfortable with that because that's how change occurs.
Yeah. I mean, uncertainty is the name of the game. And, what's interesting is that, if you actually look at the data, if you take away all the sensations of the news and what's happening today, the actual data is that we've never been more healthy. We've never been able to live longer. We've never had more abundance globally than we have right now. Life has actually improved. What hasn't improved is that all this technological innovation that's happened is actually uprooting the dormant trauma that as a species we've just sort of swept under the rug. And so what happens is when you start to expand in the uncertainty is that you tend to overestimate the threats, which is why there's so much anxiety and depression in the world today, is because people instead of thinking like the lion that's going to jump out of the bush and eat me and I should be worried about that, they're like, what's this person saying on Facebook? But we think it's like the same response in the nervous system. So if you can just start to realize that you're probably going to be all right no matter what happens, you're okay. Depression, anxiety tends to lessen as you start to take action towards what you feel like you're supposed to be doing. So it's about really underestimating the threat and starting to overestimate your own potential and ability versus overestimating the threat and underestimating yourself.
Right. Wow. I think I find a lot of comfort, and I know some people find the opposite, in when people say it's all going to work out in the end. I love that phrase. But some people go, well, you know what? What if it doesn't? It's some people don't find solace in that belief.
What if it does?
What if it does?
Exactly.
Exactly. Now, I want to continue this conversation, so we're going to bridge you into the next episode as well. Is that cool?
Yeah, of course. No problem.
Amazing. Okay, great. Well, then we'll have you back on the podcast next Monday. Thank you, Mastin Kipp. Have a good week.
You too. Catch you later.
Okay, bye.
Thanks again.
Mastin Kipp, what a good guy. Hey, you just want to call him up and go for a beer and have him give you profound life advice. Great person. He's the kind of person you want to take advice from. Do you know what I mean? And that's why he's going to be back next week. He will tell us how to find your purpose, which is a lot harder than it sounds, right? Plus, how to get an emotional workout, fitness for the insides, and secrets to romantic relationship success. He's been with his partner for 9 years, and he says, yeah, I haven't figured out everything in the world, but this one I think I got. So if you're someone who you find that you've had a series of short-term relationships, they never get past a certain point, he has a theory as to why that would be and how you can really, really make things last. Now, when it comes to the challenge this week, and what we should all do before we have episode part 2, I should say, of this Mastin Kipp conversation is identifying what some of our blocks are, okay? So maybe you know that one of your blocks in relationships is that you have issues with jealousy, or you are really insecure about some part of your body, and getting to that always brings up issues. If you can identify what those blocks are, maybe you get nervous talking to your boss, you don't want to ask for more. Let's really take a moment to be silent and think about it. Think about what those blocks are. And I feel like this would take a couple of revisits. You know, maybe you this week think about it, write down a couple of things, and then go back to that list throughout the week. And I think that's probably a good way of getting a little bit more clear on it and thinking a little bit deeper. So journal that one out for a few days. Until then, subscribe to the podcast, join the crew on Instagram at Mindful Mostly, and tune in on Friday because that's when I drop your Mostly mini-sode. And I have a lot of fun doing that one. You guys are loving it too. It's kind of just like we shoot the shit for a bit. Maybe I got another soul nugget in there, maybe a bit of a challenge for the weekend, but we just kind of like talk it out, right? Talk out the week and talk about what we're going into for the weekend. So make sure you subscribe and join us next Monday for the rest of our chat with Mastin Kipp. Have a good one. And thanks for listening to Mindful Mostly.